Welcome to The Bridge, the show that bridges the gap between Eastern and Western medicine, science and spirituality, physical and energetic health. If you're seeking to heal from within, ultimately achieving the pinnacle of health and well-being for your mind, body, and spirit, then rest assured, this show is tailored just for you. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Rogers. I'm a heart-centered, Harvard-trained epidemiologist, researcher, medical intuitive, and transformational health and longevity doctor. Basically, I find the clues that every other health practitioner misses because they're looking in the wrong place. Welcome back to The Bridge, a transformational health podcast with me, Dr. Elizabeth Rogers. Hey, podcast family, I'm so grateful that you're back here today. I hope that you had an incredible summer solstice. And so today, I'm going to tell you a story that I mentioned in the last episode when I was sharing my very first post-operative update. So if you are new to the show and you're just joining us, welcome. It's not an accident. It's certainly divine timing. So welcome. And if you are new, then I strongly recommend you go back to episode 30 and fill yourself in on the context of the story that I'm about to tell. Now, the story I'm going to tell is about how and why I landed in a specific specialist's office just a few days before I had my first surgery, just a couple of weeks ago. And this story isn't today about why it's important to go and get multiple opinions from different types of perspectives and specialists to assist you in making any kind of decision for your optimal health and well-being. Today's story is really an incredible, tangible example of what happens when you trust and follow your intuition and your divine and sacred guidance. Now, I want to share as many examples like this with you for the rest of my life because I think that it's really helpful for those of you who want to continue to rediscover your intuitive gifts, because we all have them. You were all born with them, just like I was. It's just a matter of what your gifts are. You most likely already used your gifts without even realizing. I think no matter where you are in your own personal growth and evolution here in this lifetime, that it's nice to have validation. It's nice to have tangible examples. It is for me. When I'm meeting with my mentors and they give me personal stories about things they've gone through, it helps me so much. And it's so nice to have that validation because I know that so many of you are living your own stories like the one I'm about to tell, but maybe you're just not even realizing it. Or when you are realizing it, you're not sharing it because you're thinking like, oh, people think I'm weird or something or crazy or, it's all in my head, but it's not. There are magic and miracles around you all the time, and you're making them happen. So I have a lot of awesome stories like this. One of them I just told you in a recent episode when I talked to you about how I moved from the zigzagger to the Queen of Heart. And that story was 100%. The whole day and day after the Queen of Heart thing happened, those 3 days were all an act in connection. And me just trusting and following my divine and sacred guidance. Nothing more, nothing less. Just that simple. And it can be just that simple for you. So I want to share this story with you today, and I hope that it will help you maybe reflect on times where you've had things like this happen. Maybe it will help you connect with these times when they inevitably come in the future. Maybe it will help you step into your power more and realize you can make anything you want happen. It's all about your intention. I also like to share these stories with you because I know and believe in them so much, and I don't need anybody to tell me whether they're real or not because they are. And I want to help all of you get to that place. So the more I tell you these kind of stories, the more you'll start to come out of your own shells And the more I hope you will step into your power and realize that you can do so much more than you ever could have imagined possible. So, this is what happens when you trust your intuition, you follow your divine and sacred guidance. And I think this will be so helpful for all of us who are humans living here on the three-dimensional planet, where it can be harder or more challenging or more difficult to believe in the things that I'm saying, or just to trust in it even more than you already do. Because when we can't see things with our three-dimensional eyes, we can't see our intuition, we can't see the energy around us, but we are physical and non-physical beings. So even though the thing you're most attached to is your three-dimensional body and what you look at in the mirror, the thing you are way more of is not that. I heard somewhere, and I can't remember the particular resource or reference, that we are over 70% non-physical. So more of what we are is not what we see, which means what else is out there that we can't see? And let me tell you, everybody, it is a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. There's a lot out there that we can't see, but let me promise you, it's there and it's amazing. And it's just, there's a whole world that's not accessible to our three-dimensional visual experience that we are 100% immersed in and involved with. And I want to help you tap into that more. And I think stories like this help us do just that. So, exactly 1 week before my surgery, I woke up. And as you know, I'm living in extraordinary pain and I'm a week before surgery. So now I'm just praying, talking to my guides to just make it to surgery. And so, because I've been in so much pain and just working on taking things one day at a time, because there is no other choice right now. And I really think, too, it's a lesson for me and for all of us, right? We really don't mostly just take it one day at a time, right? We've been trained by the world around us to live in a much more fast-paced type of mindset, to always be thinking ahead, thinking about what's next, planning, scheming, strategizing. But when we're doing all of those things, we're actually not being here, fully present, just taking it moment to moment, day to day. And I've really been put back into a situation where I have no other choice but to take it just like that, to live my life just like that. And setting aside the pain, it's a much better way of life. And I've been enjoying the flow of just taking it one day at a time. And the other big thing that's happened is that I've had no choice but to lean into trust. I can't see what's coming next. I have no clue what's next. I don't know what lies ahead of me on any given moment or any given day. These 6 months have taught me that there is no such thing as certainty or predictability or control. And we absolutely have no control over time. And so I've really been living this practice of what happens when we just trust and surrender. And I just want to let you know that what happens when we just trust and surrender is nothing other than extraordinary in the best of ways. I can promise you that. So, anyway, this story to me is one of those that I couldn't have ever known what was coming or why I was being told to do what I was being told to do, but I just blindly followed it. So, anyway, back to what I was saying. About a week before surgery, I just wake up in the morning and do what I do every day, which is tell my guides to just please guide me today. Just guide me today. Guide me through every moment of this day, and I will follow you. And that's literally how I live my life now. And it's completely setting me free. And it's the best thing in the world. So I wake up in the morning, I say this to my guides. Now, I say my guides, but let me just clarify for all of you what I'm talking about and who. We all have a source. You have a source because you came from a source, right? And I'm not talking about your parents here. I'm talking about something bigger. And I think you know that. So we all have a source. And so you could call this, I could call this source guidance. I could call this God, the universe, spirit, my divine and sacred guides. Sometimes I'll just say my guides. Sometimes I'll say source. But those are some terms that I use interchangeably, but they're all talking about the same thing. And so you can use any one of those terms. Maybe you already have your own. Source is a really great one, that's pretty neutral, that might resonate with you, but we all have source and we all have source guidance, and you can access it anytime. And let me tell you, one of the pieces of advice I'm being asked by my guides to give you right now is please ask for help. I can't tell you how many times I'm in the car and I'll laugh because I'll be driving somewhere and my guides will be like, don't forget to ask for help with parking. And I'm like, God, you're so smart. And let me tell you, they are so smart. They know so much more than we do. And so you absolutely should freaking trust them because let me tell you, they know. They know what they're talking about. And let me tell you, practice with parking, okay, is what I'm being told to tell you. Practice with parking. This is so simple. Next time you go somewhere, and especially if it's somewhere like, summertime, there's lots of concerts, events, things like that, big parking lots, lots of crowds, ask for help with parking. Say, hey, divine and sacred guides, find me a parking spot, right? Let me tell you, I'm never let down. Ask that question and you will receive. Promise you that. I want to hear your reports and stories, by the way. So back to the story. I wake up, I ask for guidance. I say, guide me through this day and I'll follow you. I love you and thank you. And I just hear this voice in my head that says, call this guy. And I'm not going to say who this guy is right now just to protect their privacy. I don't know why I'm being told to call this guy. I was going to tell this guy about what's been going on with me and get some advice, but I wasn't necessarily planning on doing it that day. I wasn't really in a rush. I was maybe even going to wait until after surgery. But I just hear this voice in my head that says, call this guy. And so I'm like, okay, all right, I'll call him. So, I get out of bed, start going through my morning routine. I'm in the kitchen and I'm starting to, hydrate. I make celery juice every morning and usually some other fresh juices. I'm getting ready to do those things. And I hear the voice again and it says, call this guy now. And I just said, okay, I hear you. I'll call this guy now. So I have no idea why. I'm just being told to do this. I'm just seriously, blindly following. So I get this guy's number. I sit down on the couch with my phone. I call this guy. He answers right away. I tell him who's calling. I tell him I was just calling to fill him in, on what's been going on with me. And, I start doing exactly that. And he just starts listening. And I'm still sitting there thinking, why did I have to call this guy right now? But I'm calling this guy. So this guy says to me, have you ever seen a prosthodontist? And like I mentioned in the last episode, I don't know. I think I'd heard of a prosthodontist before, but I hadn't even considered that in the realm of somebody I might want to consult with because I didn't really know exactly what their specialty was. So I didn't think that was somebody to even discuss with or consider consulting with. But this guy on the phone says to me, well, I think you need to consult with a prosthodontist. The prosthodontist would actually be able to rule in or rule out a couple of other possibilities, such as, is it just simply that you need a new crown? And maybe you don't need to have the tooth extracted at all. Or are there some potential other possibilities to consider that you haven't considered that would impact your decision to move forward with surgery? And once I heard this, I thought, oh shit, I need to see a prosthodontist. And this guy said to me, well, I definitely recommend that you try to see a prosthodontist before surgery. And then he asked me when my surgery was scheduled for, and I said, well, it's scheduled for a week from today. And he said, well, you know how the system is. It's unlikely you're going to be able to get in anywhere until at least a month from now, right? We all know that's par for the course. That's how it is, but that's not how it should be. And, but he said, it's worth trying. And it's also worth considering postponing your surgery until you can get in with somebody. But he said, I know you're in extraordinary pain, so I know that's not something you probably want to do, but it's worth considering. So as I'm hearing this, okay, what am I thinking? What would you be thinking? This is important. And I trust this person. So it's coming from a trusted source, right? And I'm thinking, okay, I probably want to see a prosthodontist before surgery. In fact, I definitely do. And I just said, okay, well, I'm going to start looking up some prosthodontists here in the area. I don't know any personally. And interestingly, this guy said to me, well, let me help you. I want to help you. I'll sit on my computer here and we'll do some research together. And I said, well, I don't mind making this my priority. I'm a researcher. It's my jam. I can just spend the rest of the day doing this. And he said, well, the thing is that a lot of the sites and people you're going to land on, although they will say they are prosthodontists, they are not actually prosthodontists. It's all marketing. So important for all of you in case you ever need to see somebody like this, just consider that information. And I thought, shit. And again, back to, this is the crap system that we're stuck with right now. Here we go again, marketing, people blowing smoke and mirrors. And we've talked about before on this show about the importance of protecting yourself as you navigate your health in the online space. So I start Googling, he starts looking up stuff. We're talking about some different people that we're pulling up and seeing. And he sees somebody and he says, okay, here's somebody. And this somebody, seems like they're in the area. They may or may not be helpful. I'm aware of this person, but that's somebody to try. He says, let's look at their information in their bio. So these are things that we recommend that you do too, my guides and I, when I say we. um, so I say, okay, he says, let's look at some other people. He said, and the other thing is you want to consider that, he said, I will tell you that all of these doctors and dentists, they protect each other. So it's in your best interest to go to somebody who's not within, a 2-mile radius of the dentist who did this to you. So also be aware of that in the future when you're just looking for objective opinions about your health and well-being. So he says, let's look for some others. So he looks up a few other people, finds one in particular, and says, okay, here's a practice run by a husband and wife. They're in your area. They seem good, and maybe give that one a try. And there were a few others that we looked at, and I just said, okay. And he said, good luck. I hope you're able to get in with a prosthodontist before surgery. Just keep me posted and, we'll talk soon. And I said, thank you so much for, your advice and just listening today. And then I just sit there for a few minutes with my eyes closed after I get off the phone and I'm thinking, shit, it's a week until surgery. And now I know with all my heart and soul that I not just want, but need to get this other opinion because now I want to make sure that I'm making the right and best choice for the outcome I want, which is to heal the root cause and return to optimal health and well being, which will be pain free living. And so I'm just getting upset because I'm thinking, my surgery is a week from tomorrow, from today. How am I ever going to get in somewhere? So I have a pendulum. I typically, when I talk to my guides and I communicate with them, I get instant answers and I don't need any other kind of tool like that anymore. But sometimes I still like to use them because it's just like extra validation. And these kinds of intuitive tools are things we will talk about in the future on other episodes. And if that's something that interests you, these are some of the kinds of things that I help my clients with because being healthy is what I help you do. I help you create longevity with holistic practices. And part of those practices are about you and your intuition and your connection and us grounding your health and well being in connection. Trust me when I say that's what it's all about, my friends. We've been getting it so way wrong for so many years. And I feel so free knowing that I finally know what it means to be healthy, which is just connected. And that's how I know you can be healthy and healing at the same time. You can be healthy in anything you want at the same time because you can be connected at the same time as you are anything and everything else. The possibilities are limitless. So I get out my pendulum. I ask my guides, I say, Spirit, can you get me in to a prosthodontist office before surgery? And I just get this strong yes response that's immediate, instantaneous, and so strong. It was almost funny. And I think I did even laugh out loud. And I said, okay. And in that moment, I actually said, go, Spirit, go. Go, Spirit, go. So sometimes when I'm telling my guides what to do, because remember, you're a powerful part of that team, they'll respond to any commands you give them. You don't need to ask, just tell them. And trust me, they'll come through always. And if you feel like they're not, then there's something we can work through to figure out why you're feeling like that. But anyway, so I get this strong yes response and I say, go, Spirit, go. Go, Spirit, go. And I getting excited now because I'm thinking, okay, well, what's going to happen? Are they going to pull this off? Like, how in the world are they going to get me in somewhere in less than a week from now? So I feel guided by my guides to call the first number that this guy suggested that I call. So I call the number, a sweet woman answers, and I tell her who I am. And I said, I'm just calling because I am considering having oral surgery soon. And it was strongly recommended that I consult with a prosthodontist before I move forward with that surgery. And I said, I'd really like to be seen as soon as possible. It's urgent. I'm not sure how soon you can get me in. I know it's probably not for a while, but I'm not, if there's anything you can do, I'd really appreciate it. And she said, sure, let me check. In less than 10 seconds, she comes back and says, I can actually see you Monday at 4 o'clock. Okay, I'm calling on a Thursday morning. And you all know as well as I do how rare is that you can call to any specialist office as a first time patient, right? You're more likely to get in sooner when you're an established patient. But I'm a first time patient. And so usually first time patients do not get priority with visits. So I'm sitting there thinking, how? And of course I know how because Spirit did it, because my guides did it, because I told them to. And somehow, some way, they pulled this off. And they knew if I called this guy on this day at this time, that I was going to make this call that got me in to see this prosthodontist on the Monday before surgery, 3 days before surgery. Can you believe it? My jaw dropped open, and I have this tendency, when you get to see the videos of the podcast, you'll see, but I have this tendency to like cheer, and I love to cheer for my guides, and I love to like whoop it up with them, and I love to get excited with them. And when they do stuff like this, I just go crazy, and I cheer and I throw my hands up and I get really excited. And I also feel that when you do that, it helps you get better responses, because I just feel like it's a way we can communicate with them, is just like as if it was my best friend or somebody here in person and we were cheering together. I do it right here, anywhere, sometimes in public, just like they were right there with me in 3D form, because they might as well will be. Because they might as well be. So, yeah, my guides pull off me getting a visit to the prosthodontist's office 3 days before surgery as a first time patient. You tell me how easy that is. It is not. Talk about rare. I was waiting for her to come back and say, well, we're booked, for the next few weeks. I could get you in next month. That's what I was thinking was best case scenario. Even when my guides told me, of course, we can get you in, and I'm getting that definitive, very strong yes just a few minutes before I make the call, even though they're saying I can do this for you. And I say, go, spirit, go. Our human egos and minds and doubt come in, but they never let me down. And they pulled this off. So the way I got into that prosthodontist's office that Monday, 3 days before surgery, was because I followed my divine guidance, because I followed what I could hear. I could hear them talking to me. I could hear them telling me to call this guy. I could hear them telling me everything. And after the call was over and I got the appointment, I seriously said to Spirit and my guides, whatever you want to call it, I just said, Spirit, will you just guide me through the rest of this day and the rest of this life, and I will follow you. I don't want to do it any other way. And so in that moment, they gave me the list of the rest of the things that I was going to do and how I was going to move through my day. And it was a really great day. And I wonder what life would be like for all of us if this is how we lived every moment of every day. Don't you? So sit with that question yourself. And I'm not going to tell you about what happened at the prosthodontist's office, because I really already filled you in on the details that were important on the last episode. But I wanted to tell you the story of how I landed there, because the story of how I landed there and why, to me, is just as, if not more important than the visit I had there itself. But as you know, then I went into that visit and I was able to connect with somebody who was listening to me. So that was the other thing, to follow through a little bit with that day of that visit. I get to that doctor's office and I meet that doctor. And if you remember in the last episode, I said to you that he actually spent 15 to 20 minutes before we even talked about what's going on with me, just connecting with me heart to heart on a personal level. We were just shooting the shit for 15 to 20 minutes, just hanging out, getting to know each other, talking about what we had in common, which was a lot of stuff, talking about epidemiology because he understands what I do, talking about my practice, talking about our common, where we're from, our families, just what we love about the area, what we miss about the North, Thai food, random stuff, like the kind of stuff you talk about with your friends when you're out at dinner. And then that even solidified more on that day as I'm talking to somebody who's rare Because as you know, we don't often get to go to any kind of practitioner who cares enough to just get to know us before they even give a shit about talking to you about your health. Establishing that connection, again, is everything, because what did I tell you and what will I continue to tell you? Being healthy is being connected. So then that connection is not just a connection with ourselves, with our source. That connection then with ourselves and our source is what allows us to get connected with other beings and people who are like-minded and aligned with us. So, but of course, that's where I landed, was in that particular prosthodontist office, probably the only one in the county, at least, that connects with his patients in this specific and intentional and heart-centered way. And as that was going on, I knew my guides had sent me not just to this appointment, but to this specific person. I felt comfortable with him. I trusted him. We created an honest and authentic connection. And he really listened. And he sincerely evaluated and considered what's going on. When I asked him questions, he sat next to me at my level and looked me in the eyes while he taught me things. He explained things to me. In fact, I asked him what something was at one point that I had heard of. And he sat down and drew a picture, taught me about the biology of my tooth because he knows I'm into that stuff, and helped me learn. He was like, "This is going to be fun. Well, I'll teach you." And I was like, "Oh, I love this shit." And he was like, "I know you do." So just when you get to talk to somebody and connect with somebody like that, who's a practitioner of any kind, who's going to help you deal with your health and support you with your health and well-being in any aspect, those people are few and far between. I know, because I'm one of them, and I spent so many years after my near-death experience searching for one, and I never found them, and so I eventually gave up, which was what was part of the driving force for the foundation of this practice and what eventually was going to become this podcast. So then I was even more sure. And then after I left that dentist office or prosthodontist office on that day, I walked outside and I looked across the street, and there was a big, beautiful, what looked like a garden, maybe a little tiny park. And there was a sign that said, "The Garden of Hope and Courage." And I just burst into tears because, you know what, folks, you can't make this shit up. I can't make this stuff up. And I feel like even when we're in pain, if we can just stay connected, our guides, our source, they show up for us always in the biggest ways if we let them. So I walk across the street because I see the Garden of Hope and Courage, and I just burst into tears. And I had just the most beautiful walk through this most peaceful, tranquil garden. And there were gorgeous flowers and trees and around this little tiny pond. And it was across the street from a hospital. And it had been put there as a sanctuary for the patients of the families and for the patients themselves and the hospital staff themselves. And I just thought, what a special place. So it was just like one thing led to another, to another, to another, all because I followed the guidance that I was given. And I was able to follow the guidance I was given because I was connected And because I was connected, I was tuned in, and I was listening, and I could hear everything. And if you're wondering, how do I know what's my voice and what's not? What you're hearing will most likely sound just like you. It won't necessarily sound like another person's voice. It might. But this is where connection and developing it becomes really critically important and helpful, because as you develop and you get to know yourself better, the more you know what's you, the more you'll know what's not. And part of being healthy isn't just about being connected. It's about getting to know yourself. But that happens when, guess what? You're connected. You get to know yourself in a deep, intimate way that you can't access when you are not connected. It's like being connected takes you into this energetic state that allows you to connect with frequencies, dimensions, planes of existence that you can't necessarily access at all or as easily when you are not connected. And I've said this before, but watch for when things pop into your mind. And we'll talk about that more in another episode, but I wanted to share this story with you today so you could hear a tangible example, like I said, of what happens when we're connected and we follow our divine guidance. And I am very divinely guided and very, very grateful. And this guidance is integrated and infused in everything I do and everything I am, because it's part of me. Just like you have source guidance that's part of you, believe it or not. But I know if you're listening to the show, you probably already believe it, and you probably already know it and know it well. So thank you for tuning into this story. I hope that it's given you something of value, something relatable, something tangible that you can use to help you in your own growth, in your own health and well-being, as you develop your own connection. I love you all. I hope that you have an absolutely amazing day wherever you are. In the next episode, I have some awesome surprises coming up. We're going to talk about some cool stuff. So I will be looking forward to seeing you next week and connecting with you then. But until then, I hope you can feel the gigantic wave of love and supportive energy that I'm sending out to fill all the spaces all around all of you. I know and trust that you'll feel it. And until next time, remember that creating and sustaining optimal health and longevity is an ongoing journey that never ends. So until next time, stay inspired, stay aligned, stay connected, and please keep shining really, really, really brightly. Thank you so much for listening to The Bridge, a transformational health podcast with yours truly, Dr. Elizabeth Rogers. If you enjoyed the show today, it would mean so very much to me if you subscribe to the show and leave an honest, positive review. You can easily subscribe by going to the upper right-hand corner of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and press the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner. Also, be sure to sign up for my email list and join our private community to get even more content, value, and support on your health and well-being journey. You'll find these links in the show notes. Sending you so much positive and supportive energy today. I really hope you can feel it.